Ah, the classics. What a nostalgic and entertaining era it was to be a Sonic fan. Many consider this the peak of Sonic level design and gameplay, but for me, I see it as an opportunity to learn and grow from the past mistakes. As a fellow game designer myself, it is my duty to uphold the principles that Sega has left with us all these years ago and create something anew, building from their solid foundation until we are able to surpass them in both style and substance. Who am I kidding? I like to make a dramatic diatribe where I talk about the importance of analyzing this, but really this is all just for fun. The levels in a platforming game are the things that make or break it. Sure, the character's control scheme, the music, the art style, and all of the other elements that make up a good game are important, but at the foundational level, if your platformer doesn't have any good levels for the player to traverse through, you might as well just give them a shiny toy that they have nothing else to do with. And that's why in today's video, I'm going to be ranking and reviewing one of my favorite platforming franchises, Sonic the Hedgehog. As you all know, the classic Sonic games are widely considered to be the best that this Blue Hedgehog has to offer. And while I tend to disagree with that sentiment very strongly, I do have to say, Sega had a good thing going with this incredibly unique and colorful speed-based platformer. But enough dilly-dallying, it's time for me to get into the rankings. Do keep in mind that I'm going to split this video series into a three-parter. I asked you guys in a poll recently, should I include superstars for this ranking video? And even though the overwhelming majority of you said yes, I had to take into consideration all of the other classic Sonic stages that I would have to technically include should I put superstars on this list. So I decided to split this into a three-part series. For part 1, I will be covering the Genesis-inspired classic Sonic games, that is 1, 2, 3 and Knuckles, CD, and Mania, and leave Superstars, Sonic Forces, and Sonic Generations classic Sonic levels for part 2. And then finally I would end off this three-part series with the DIMS 2D games for Game Boy, DS, and 3DS, that is the Advanced Series, Rush Series, and Colors respectively. Do keep in mind, even though I do grace myself with the Game Designer title, this is all really just subjective. If I put a level in here that you think is better or is worse than what I rank it as, feel free to disagree with me in the comments below, as I'd like to talk about this stuff. The criteria at which I will be ranking these levels are based off of the music, art design, level design, and overall aesthetic and vibe that the level gives to the player. I'm also going to be ranking each stage as an Act 1 and 2 respectively. That means if Act 1 is really good, but Act 2 is really bad, then those acts will be combined into one weighted score where I'll actually put my official ranking. I know this might seem a little unfair, but do keep in mind, I don't want to be here all day ranking 120 plus levels for God knows how long. I do have to edit this, so go easy on me, okay? I think I've explained myself pretty well. It's time for me to get into the rankings. Here is how a game designer ranks every single classic Sonic stage, in the Genesis era of course. Alright, starting with the F tier, we have number 48 on our list, Sky Chase Zone, the worst classic Sonic level in my opinion. I'm already starting with a hot take, I see. So I know a lot of you might be noticing the lack of water in this first choice, but yeah, I've said it, I hate Sky Chase Zone. There's nothing more frustrating than a auto-scroller level where you have to wait and have limited movement in a Sonic game. It's just the worst decision. Top that off with the bland visuals and not really appealing music in my opinion, and you've got yourself a pretty annoying snooze fest that lasts way too long. I mean, 2 minutes in total time doesn't seem like all that much, but when your main gameplay loop is doing this, yeah, that 2 minutes feels like an eternity. And also, this level isn't a walk in the park either. Some of these enemies will trip you up if you mess up any input and slide off the plane. It's an insta-death, and keep in mind, this is towards the end of the game, meaning any game overs you get, you'll have to restart the entire playthrough over again. Imagine having to start over due to such a stupid and boring level. I don't understand how kids in the past got through such levels. They must have had so much discipline. I mean, look at these enemy turtles, even they look bored. Look, there's nothing much to say on this level, it's just long and boring. Also, Winged Fortress is not the Act 2 to Sky Chase, shut up. Alright, now we've gotten to a pick which all of y'all can agree on. For number 47 on this list, we have Labyrinth Zone in all of its horrible glory. To be honest, what's there to say that hasn't already been said? I'm pretty sure the game developers knew that this stage was going to be the most hated when they were designing it. I mean, we have water physics that completely disrupt the main gameplay loop of Sonic speed and momentum. We have annoying enemy placement and traps which seem to catch every player off guard despite the fact that they probably see most of them coming. We have this annoying ass water and drowning mechanic which adds nothing to the game but annoyance and frustration. Seriously, why make the characters slower and then punish them for not being fast enough to collect bubbles? That doesn't make any sense. Unless you want to inflate the game with artificial difficulty, that is. And all of that is played to a pretty ugly grayish ruinous type of sprite work, with the music being an elementary tone that sounds way too lighthearted for the hell you're going through at this place. It's safe to say, Labyrinth Zone is a stage that feels and plays like it was meant to mock the player, and in reality, Labyrinth Zone is a stage that was probably built and made with the sole purpose to mock the player. You would be hard pressed to find anybody who genuinely likes this level, much less plays it anymore. So I'll just throw it in F tier and move on. Okay, for number 46 on this list, we have Metropolis Zone, and for once, this is a stage that I hate to put in the F tier, but one that I must, due to my instincts as an inspiring game designer. No, but in all seriousness, this level's aesthetic absolutely slaps. The amazing industrial factory vibe that you get from the sprite work with its animated hydraulic presses and spinning metallic turbines in the background really add to the sense of wonder but underlying danger that this level has going for it. And the overall saturated feel that Sonic 2 brought to the series really eschews wonders here, as you have these glowing green metals juxtaposed with this harsh orange lava, selling the idea perfectly that this is a factory no one should be really working in, while still having those upbeat elements in it as well, with the fast-paced music in the background ringing through as a triumphant salute of sorts, making it feel like this whole level is a Home Depot commercial at times. Unfortunately, those are the only aspects the stage has going for it, as the rest of it is absolutely atrocious. Number 1, this is possibly the worst enemy placement out of any other classic Sonic stage, bar none. I mean, you have this stupid starfish robot that literally comes out of nowhere from the margins of the screen and shoots at Sonic while he's trying to run up these turbines, which, mind you, if you mess up, you get crushed to death. Then you have these classic pincer and crab robots, which have the most unforgivable hitboxes imaginable, not to mention that they come off screen, so if you're running, you have almost no time to react to them. Did I mention how long this level is as well? This is the only level in Sonic 2 that goes on for 3 whole acts. Mind you, the reason they got rid of this act structure is because in Sonic 1, it would feel like the levels went on forever. So why did they bring it back here? Well, difficulty of course, because there's nothing more difficult than annoying the player. Seriously, I just have no fond memories of this level. I'm pretty sure in Act 3, there's this whole section where it's just lava and you have to do tight platforming, where if you mess up once, you have to die. Hell, even if you don't mess up, if you don't know where to go, you'll just die anyway because the game doesn't telegraph where you're supposed to go in this level that well. It is by far the hardest level in Sonic 2, and I highly recommend you get Super Sonic for this level if you want any semblance of a good time when traversing through it. Okay, so I just realized that I've been wrongly ranking these levels by an increment of 1. So Sky Chase was actually the 49th on this list, not 48th. Whoopsie. Anyway, for number 46, we have Global Warming Zone from Sonic 2. Okay, but seriously, am I the only one who thinks Oil Ocean looks absolutely ugly? In this bright and colorful art style that we got in Sonic 2, why do we have to use the most brownish, grayish, and purplish colors that do not mesh well at all? I get it's supposed to be a dirty, polluted oil factory rig, but geez, Sega, this place looks horrible to live in. Now, my reasons for hating this stage mostly come from just the aesthetics alone, but the level design isn't doing that much either. First of all, I don't like the insta-kill mechanic if you drown in the oil for more than 3 seconds. That gets really annoying. Jumping up the oil slides and navigating through the breaking platforms ain't that much fun either, especially with the looming death of instant drowning. And can I just say, the boss for this stage is absolutely lame. It is simultaneously one of the hardest bosses and one of the easiest bosses in the entire game, if you know what you're doing. And I know I'm not technically ranking the boss fights for these stages, as I'm leaving that for a separate video. I do have to say, it does drag down this level a tad bit more. I know I'm probably overhating Oil Ocean, as for many of y'all, I know y'all actually like this level, but I don't know, I just don't like the vibes it gives off. Hashtag too much oil. And for the last pick in the F tier of this list, we have number 45, Scrap Brain Zone. And this is another one that pains me so much because I actually rock hard with the aesthetic of this level. I mean, Sega knew how to make a final confrontation. You have this hard industrial landscape with giant smoking power plants towering in the background. Then that Act 1 beautifully progresses into the heart of the factory where you had to deal with all of these harsh, jagged edges with metallic pieces everywhere. And then only for it to get ruined in Act 3 where they bring Labyrinth Zone back. Yep, this is evidence that the developers knew what they were doing with Labyrinth Zone and intentionally wanted to annoy and frustrate the player. This sadly brings down the stage all the way to F tier as a lot of the annoying traps and bad placement of enemies make their return here. And even though the aesthetic and music goes crazy for Scrap Brain Zone, seriously, this has some of the best sprite work in Sonic 1, I unfortunately have to go with my gut and say that it is the best of the worst in my opinion. From the annoying level design, seriously, these invisible and flipping platforms are so egregious, and the punishing enemy placement, I mean this bomb enemy literally can't be hurt by Sonic. And you've got a pretty tough level, which in all fairness, is the last level of the game, but that doesn't make up for its unfair design. 10 out of 10 aesthetic though, that's why I put it at the top of F tier. Okay, next tier on this list is the D tier. These are for stages that while don't think are necessarily bad per se, they're ones I don't really look forward to on each subsequent playthrough of the Sonic game. Think of these as like the levels you have to get past in order to get to the good stuff, like the veggies you have to eat before you can get to dessert. For number 44 on this list, we have Hidden Palace Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and while this isn't really a bad stage per se, or even mediocre, I didn't really know where to put it since it's not really a traditional zone. It's more like a boss fight where you find Knuckles and he comes to the conclusion that Eggman was tricking him the entire time. I don't know. The art and aesthetic of this level is super appealing, with the hieroglyphics depicting Sonic beating Eggman in a climactic space battle. And the storytelling on display with Knuckles finally realizing his betrayal is pretty nice as well. I don't know, just a pretty middling of the road zone. Definitely a hard one to rank. Okay, on to number 43, Wing Fortress Zone, and I kinda lied, I actually don't like this level. For one, the artwork is super bland and basic just like from Sky Chase Zone, only with these ugly beige colors to paint out the ship. I guess it's to give off the more industrial vibe that Eggman gives, contrasting with the colorful and nicely saturated levels beforehand, but I don't know, it just seems kinda boring to me. And on to the song, while it's not bad, it definitely is weird as it gives off this traditionalist 1960s Air Force American vibe. I don't know how to put it, but it doesn't seem fitting for one of the final levels of the game. But on to the main reason why I despise this level, the difficulty. Man, say it with me everyone. Bottomless pits that you can't see coming is not good game design. It's just meant to frustrate the player, especially with these weird pseudo dash panels that just send you off into a void of nothingness. That decision was completely uncalled for, I don't know whose idea it was. Top that off with the extremely tight platforming and the really hard to distinguish background from foreground elements, and you've got yourself a pretty frustrating stage, I'm not gonna lie. Definitely deserving of the bottom of D tier in my opinion. Okay, for number 42, we have a stage that I actually played recently, and that is Marble Zone from Sonic 1. And oh my gosh, I cannot express enough just how much of a downgrade this is from the beginning level Green Hill Zone. I consider this zone borderline false advertising just from how hard it drags down the earlier game's pace. I mean, you have this bright, beautiful zone with fast-paced loop-de-loops and slopes, only for that to get dragged down to a halt with this sluggish and dregged platforming section where you have platforming obstacles that you can't see coming and insta-kill objects for the second level. Seriously, I remember distinctly in Act 3, there's this part where you're waiting on lava on this really tiny cube, and the lava rises in order for you to get up to this ledge. But the thing is, you have to actually wait for the second pillar of lava, otherwise you basically softlock your game and have to die to restart it over. Really nice and forgiving level design there, guys. Have a softlock portion of the level that a player has to memorize, otherwise they can't progress. And just the amount of waiting, the amount of careful platforming, the amount of guesses you have to make just to not die. Seriously, there are so many close calls in this level, it's just not fun. You do not want your players to be tiptoeing on glass for the second level of the game. Goodness. The music is pretty fire though. Gives off this very vampiric medieval vibe. Also, the level's aesthetic holds up pretty well all these years later. Seriously, Sonic 1's art style is pretty good. Alright, for number 41 of this list, I have another controversial take. I really don't like Flying Battery Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And funnily enough, it has some of the same issues that I have with Marble Zone from Sonic 1, where Flying Battery Zone is just a huge difficulty increase from Mushroom Hill, which was pretty decently fair in difficulty, all things considered. Now granted, this is because Flying Battery Zone comes in the second half of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where the player would have already been acclimated to the controls and general gameplay style of each level, but still, Mushroom Hill Zone is such a great natural progression of the game's difficulty, while also serving as a great introductory level for Knuckles' side of the game. But then you enter Flying Battery with these bottomless pits, these extremely hard to dodge obstacles, and multiple crushing pits, as well as its hard to navigate nature. And it sucks because I really like the overall aesthetic of this level, with the idea of Sonic racing on this giant sky ship, navigating through the internals and externals of this giant dangerous carrier. I definitely feel like Skydeck was inspired by this stage a lot, but once you get to the inside portions of this level, it all just turns into a huge drag in my opinion. The enemy designs, some of the obstacle placement, the bottomless pits, it's all just not appealing to me. I know this is all personal opinion, but for me, Flying Battery Zone is not a good second level to get the player into Sonic and Knuckles. And I feel like they could have done the idea of racing on a giant airship a lot better. For number 40th on this list, and the last of the D tier, we have Wacky Workbench. A pretty interesting pick, I'm sure you're all thinking. But for me, this stage just seems like the most obvious worst stage in Sonic CD. I mean, whenever people talk about the weird and insane level design of Sonic CD, this stage is always the first one they go to. It's just so bizarre. But first off, let's talk about that aesthetic. One general problem I have with Sonic CD's level design is that it's hard to just tell where the hell Sonic even is in these locations half the time. I mean, for Palm Tree Panic, it's pretty obvious. He's in a nice grassy plains area, but then for Collision Chaos, some casino level, Quartz Quadrant, some sort of factory, maybe, with gems? While other classic Sonic names have pretty easy and simple to understand names and locations, Sonic CD just kind of felt like it was doing whatever, and it's kind of worse off for it in my opinion. In the case of Wacky Workbench though, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a factory, just a really wacky one. On to the music though. Wacky Workbench also has some of the weakest tracks in the entire soundtrack for Sonic CD, not including the past themes, even though those are pretty decent. Which is actually pretty funny, because if you listen to the Wacky Workbench on the US version of the soundtrack, I actually think it's one of the best tracks the US version has to offer for the present, good, and bad future. But a level is nothing without its level design, and boy, everyone gets confused when they go in this level. I mean, half of the floor is springboards that send you up 90 meters into the air. Finding the robot generators in the past is a completely impossible task to do unless you already know about this weird occurrence. I've already talked about why this is bad design in my most difficult parts in every Sonic game video. And overall, the colors and sprite work of this level aren't really appealing to me. Especially in the bad future, which while I know is supposed to look ugly, most of the other bad futures at least had some art direction in them, but this stage just looks like, hey, let's just spam the brown texture over and over again. I'm sure that would make it look evil and decrepit. I just cannot vibe with this level. Wacky Workbench, should I say it, is a little too wacky for me to understand clearly. And for all of those reasons, I'm putting it at the top of D tier, as a good representation of what a subpar Sonic level looks and plays like. Alright, next up we have the C tier, the just okay tier, if you will. For these zones, they're ones that are not really offensive, but also don't really push the bar as some of the best platforming experiences you'll have in this franchise. These are the type of levels that you don't really have a strong opinion one way or another, or if the zone has two different acts, one that is really good, while another one that is really bad, that drags down the score to just being average. For a good example of this, we have number 39 on my list, Sandopolis Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I feel like this zone gets a pretty bad rap, mostly due to its notorious Act 2, but man, Act 1 really slaps with the overall vibe and aesthetic. First of all, this is one of the most technically impressive levels in Sonic 3, with these nice heatwave effects that give the level's background a sort of mirage kind of feeling, as well as selling just how hot the desert is in this place. On top of that, you have pretty nice interactable gimmicks in the level, such as the double loop, the fading sand, and the really cool pulley where you get to hang on the side of the wall and you have to jump. All of these aid in the spectacle of the level, which Sonic 3 noticeably turned up a lot during its gameplay. But then you get to Act 2 and oh boy, everything falls apart. This stupid ghost mechanic, this one mechanic can ruin such a good level, man. So sad. I feel like the main reason why this gimmick is so hated is because it feels like the level is trying to rush the player in a sense. You're taking away the player's agency to explore and look around the place, exploration being one of the key vital aspects of any classic Sonic game. It's actually very similar to the drowning mechanic in that regard, where the player is forced into an anxiety-inducing situation where most of their survival is determined by either sheer luck or having prior knowledge of the level beforehand. In other words, not fun level design. There's also just weird moments in this level, like the infinite expanding sand slides and the weird rock puzzles. Definitely a bizarre Act 2 that drags down the first act way too much. But hey, I really rock with the music and visuals here. It's a really nice temple looking area, something that's pretty unique to Sonic games all things considered. Next up on the list, we have number 38, Carnival Night Zone, and boy do I have a hot take for you. I don't think the first half of Sonic 3 is all that interesting in my opinion. There, I said it. The game really only picks up around Ice Cap Zone for me personally. And the reason for that is just because of this weird, awkward placement of the duo levels Marble Garden Zone and Carnival Night Zone, which really can be swapped on this list respectively. The reason I put Carnival Night Zone here is because of the dreaded Barrel of Doom. Oh my goodness, I do not like this obstacle one bit. Not only is it not foreshadowed well, with the player basically having to get lucky and just experiment with the obstacles around them, but it also just genuinely soft-locks the game if the player doesn't know what to do here, making it a really frustrating obstacle for no reason. The vibe and aesthetic of this level is also very unappealing to me. Is it just me, or does Carnival Night have less appealing artwork and colors than Casino Night Zone from Sonic 2? I know casinos and carnivals are two completely different places, but come on, this is supposed to be a giant fun fair full of awesome rides and stuff. Couldn't it look something more like this? Instead of this borderline going out of business as daycare setup? And man, most of the sound effects in this level are just ear-grating at times. But all of this isn't too bad of a problem, and definitely not to the extent where I despise it like the earlier levels on this list. I just think it has a pretty unappealing aesthetic, with some admittedly decent level design and level progression. I especially like the music, which is the most Michael Jackson sounding song in the entire game in my opinion. Number 37, Marble Garden Zone. As I said earlier, you could swap the placement of these two zones in the list, it really doesn't matter to me. The reason why Marble Garden Zone is so unappealing to me is because it just feels like another grassy level after we just got done with Angel Island 2 zones ago. But this one is a little bit harder and has more annoying terrain to traverse through. This is a level that has another case of the where the heck am I syndrome, where it's supposed to be a garden, but with marble on it. Why don't I see more rocky textures than this weird temple-like design that we also saw in Hydrocity a bit? I don't know, the colors and music just don't do it for me. Level design wise, I actually find it's pretty decent with some really cool gimmicks like the spinny top and this really cool drill thing that breaks through walls. But man, are some of the enemies here obnoxious, especially with the fake spikes enemy. Man, it just feels like I'm listing stuff on the level at this point. I don't really have that much more to say about Marble Garden Zone other than it's not really that exciting. You just play through it and you have the basic standard Sonic experience, but nothing too extra than that. That's why it's perfectly average. Although I will say this boss can go suck my dick. Alright, for number 36 in this list, we have Aquatic Ruin. This is a zone that is completely inoffensive and ordinary in every sense of the word. If I had to put a zone in the complete middle of Sonic stages that you would typically play as, this would be the one I choose. It's just one you go through the motions of, nothing too spectacular. The water in the stage, while still annoying, isn't nearly as obnoxious as other early classic Sonic levels, and the level design is pretty straightforward, with no unfair enemy placements or obstacles. Problem is, the level doesn't really do anything interesting. Even the main music and art style of this level is just pretty average, definitely below Sonic 2's standards. And because of that, this level is actually pretty forgettable in most playthroughs, but hey, I'd rather a level be out of the way than actually try to infuriate the player. So because of that, it goes nicely in the C tier. number 35 on this list, I think I have a pick that people will find controversial, but one that I think is fitting, and that is Spring Yard Zone from Sonic 1. Many people don't talk about this, but it's pretty known that Sonic 1's level progression is more of an ebb and flow between levels, where you'll have a fast level, then a slow platforming one, then a fast level again. While Spring Yard Zone is supposed to act as the fast-paced level after Marble Zone, which was a slog to get through, as I've already mentioned. Because of that, Spring Yard Zone's actually pretty satisfying to play. It has a nice pace to it, some really cool mechanics such as being able to break the speed barrier, and I jive with the overall aesthetic and music of this level. It's obvious it's supposed to be some sort of casino-like level, though that idea isn't that well conveyed through the sprite work of all things. Regarding the music specifically, man, have I seen some Sonic fans tear up this theme with their remixes, especially that T-Lopes version. It really brings this sound to life, and shows the full potential of this level if it was made in the modern era. The level isn't perfect, it still has some annoying enemy placement, some really hard to navigate platforming challenges that are way too inappropriate for the third level of the game, and just some genuinely unfair level traps. But overall, Spring Yard Zone is an enjoyable level. I definitely look forward to playing it after the hell that is Marble Zone, so maybe the game designers were good at conditioning that response. Okay, for number 34 and our last stage in the C tier, we actually have the first Sonic Mania zone in this video, and that is what I believe to be the worst zone in the game, Oil Ocean. Come on, you all knew this was coming. A good chunk of y'all probably strongly disagree with this pick, but yeah, at the top of C tier we have Mania's Oil Ocean. Again, I don't really feel like there's much need for explanation here, though I do like the revamped colors and overall animations of this Oil Ocean zone. I still think the aesthetic is ugly. The reuse of the Sandopolis Act 2 gimmick for Act 2 of Oil Ocean is absolutely atrocious and again, messes with player agency, although this time around it is a lot more forgiving, admittedly. But the main reason why I say this stage is just okay and doesn't make it into the upper echelon of classic Sonic stages is just because there's nothing really memorable in it. The most memorable aspect to me was the fact that the oil turns on fire and the stupid Sandopolis gimmick they reintegrate into Act 2. But that act has like, what, one memorable set piece at the end with the submarine, and then the worst boss in the entire game directly after it. Not to mention this stage is weirdly difficult for some reason, even harder than Titanic Monarch in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's still a Mania stage, it still has really good level design, it still has pretty nice progression, and because of that, it makes it to the very top of the C tier list, and thus closes all of the Sonic stages that, while not perfect, still adds some charm to the overall franchise and its legacy. Alright, here's where things start to get a little fun. Up until this point, from F tier to C tier, the stages were kind of mid, but tolerable. But B tier and up, these are stages I actively look forward to playing, with B tier in particular being stages that are actually good, like most players will find their engagement with them pretty satisfying in my opinion. These are the zones that have either really memorable music, a really recognizable and fun gimmick, or just an overall aesthetic that make these levels stand out from the rest. Starting off with this tier, we have a personal favorite of mine, Metallic Madness from Sonic CD. This stage just feels like if you did Scrap Brain Zone right. It has a kick-ass aesthetic, an amazing level theme, a super memorable gimmick, and an amazing aesthetic that really gives off the vibe of, oh shoot, Eggman has finally snapped. This is actually one of the rare cases in Sonic CD where I think the game's overall weird level design and bizarre tile mapping actually helps make this place seem even more creepier. I mean, we're talking about a zone where the bad future is the default state it's in. And I like how the stage is hard, but not unfair. Specifically speaking, it's hard to get the good future in this level because the game designers brilliantly recognize that it's far more satisfying of a difficulty spike to make getting the good ending the challenge and not just beating the game. This adds narrative stakes to the overall gameplay because you're not trying to just beat the game, you're trying to stop Eggman. It's all good stuff. Also, I know I already said it before, but the music in this level is just banging. Especially the Bad Future music, which somehow manages to sound even more sinister and evil than the default track. I like how the pseudo-rap kinda sounds like Eggman's evil machinations going on in the background, haunting Sonic as he struggles to get past this metallic hellscape. Especially in the Bad Future, where it sounds like the man straight up is dropping a diss track on Sonic. I like how the lyrics directly oppose the main theme, at least in the Japanese version, where it says you can do anything, but in Metallic Madness Bad Future, it says you can't do anything.
You can't do anything, so don't even try. Get some help.
Truly genius storytelling right there, I gotta say. It really goes to show how dedicated Sega was to Sonic's edgy persona at the time. Metallic Madness is just overall a banger of a stage, and sets the standard well for what I believe to be a good and satisfying classic Sonic level. Wow, another Sonic CD stage back to back. For number 32, we have Palm Tree Panic, the first zone of the game. Honestly, it feels like cheating to rank all of the beginning zones of every game, mostly because I know it's where the game developers put most of the initial effort when designing the zones. The first level in a platformer can make or break a game, so you have to ensure that every frame of gameplay is immensely satisfying and addicting to play through. And in the case of Palm Tree Panic, I gotta say, it succeeds. First off, this opening track with its bombastic and cheery vibe immediately communicates to the player that this is going to be a chill kind of game. And those first opening seconds with the level design showing Sonic go on this loop at this weird pseudo 3D perspective, I for one especially knew the moment that I saw this iconic set piece that Sonic CD was going to be a very different type of game. And also, can we just talk about the sprite work in this level? Every single asset just looks so alive and animated. I especially like these moving clouds against the harsh blue atmosphere, as well as the little dancing foliage that gives this level an even more cheery vibe. As a starter level, it also does good in aiding the main mechanic of the game, the time travel, with you being presented with two signs, past and future, on this first speed section. Should the player accidentally take the high ground, they'll get presented with this dark and drab future with far more edgier music and a harsher art aesthetic. But should they click the past one, which is more straightforward and more obvious for the player, then they'll get presented with a, while still cheery, a noticeably toned down vibe from the rest of the stage. Get the good future, however, and you won't hear the game shut up with how happy it is with you that you succeeded. It really is just amazing stuff. Easy to get used to the controls, easy to kill the enemies, and easy to get the good future. A perfect beginner level. Oh boy, for number 31 on this list, we have Flying Battery Zone from Sonic Mania, and it feels like Sega heard all of my critiques about the Sonic & Knuckles version and fixed everything. 1. The idea of racing from the exterior and interior of the plane is far better executed in this version of the stage, with there actually being transitions when you enter these doors. That paired with Act 2's beautifully rainy sequence, and you got yourself a pretty cinematic feeling zone, I'm not gonna lie. And the first act isn't that bad either. The bottomless pits are way easier to avoid, and the interior of the stage has far better platforming, with there being a lot less raiding around like in the original. Also, is it just me, or are the sound effects really satisfying to listen to as you play through the stage? All the little nooks and crannies with the garbage and the nice sprite work, it's just all around really fun. I don't really have much to say about some of these stages, as they'll boil down to has really cool mechanics and really nice music, but just know that I enjoy them quite well. Alright, for number 30 we have Collision Chaos, and while I know I kinda made fun of the stage earlier in the video, I really don't actually hate it that much. Like I said, the casino vibe is kinda hard to get from this level, but I like the cool chrome aesthetics that really set it apart from other classic Sonic stages. Sonic CD just has a really creative art style at times, I gotta say, but it's mainly the music and overall vibe that gets me. First of all, I think that this stage has possibly the best Good Future theme in the entire game, but that's in contention with Quartz Quadrant, so I won't get into that. But something I will get into is just how beautiful the past and future versions of the stage are. My god, are they gorgeous, with the vibrant colors and cool atmosphere. I just feel like Collision Chaos is just a vibe of a stage. I'm a sucker for the casino-like stages in Sonic games, because they're usually harmless and just have a ton of fun. But Collision Chaos just takes it to the next level, with its immensely surrealist architecture and amazing pastel colors. Like I said before, it's not much more complicated than that, although I do like the fact that this zone shows that there are easier places to go into the past than others. Using the springs and the ping pong circles as a secondary tool for showcasing that to the player, just excellent game design. Okay, for number 29 we have Sky Sanctuary Zone. Now this is possibly the most controversial take on the list, as some people might think it's too high, simultaneously as some people might think it's too low. Personally speaking, I feel like the fact that this zone isn't a complete 2-act structure brings it down by quite a bit, as I feel like it's kind of unfair to put a 1-act stage so high up on the list. But man, what Sky Sanctuary does with that one act is simply a masterclass. First of all, we get this bright and cheerful melody come in as Sonic rises to the top of this gigantic, towering monument. We see the Death Egg in all of its glory, beautifully rise through the cloud tops as Eggman sends his strongest Egg Robos to stop Sonic from his evil plan. Knuckles, using up the last of his energy, just sits there, tiredly, as he awaits Sonic to save the day once again. I have never played a stage that is so cheerful while at the same time being dreadful in its tone. Usually the penultimate final level would be something foreboding, something sinister, kinda like how Lava Reef Zone is. But having it be this bright and cheerful ascension as you heroically go to stop Eggman is something that's truly spectacular and a great subversion of expectations. And even though I know this stage mostly consists of a boss rush, you cannot deny that what little level design it does have is just simply iconic. So much though, that out of all the levels Sonic Generations could have chosen for its representation of Sonic 3, it chose this one level that only has one act. Think about that. Sky Sanctuary was so memorable and well executed that it beat out other fully created stages just from its sheer brilliancy alone. If that's not deserving of praise, then I'm not sure what is. The only reason it's not much higher in this list is because, as I said, it's only one act. But man, what this zone does with that one act is simply incredible. Speaking of Lava Reef Zone, for number 28 on this list, we have it as our choice. It's funny because as a kid, I was so bad at Sonic that I could never actually get to the zone, so it just had this majestic and otherworldly appeal to me. And I've gotta say, it holds up pretty well for that. It's weird for how a zone based off of literal lava, it has more fair difficulty than other zones based off of non-harmful substances. Just the idea and concept of such a stage is worthy of the B tier in my opinion. I mean, combining volcanic liquids with fish coral habitats, it just seems like an amazing mixture. Oh wait, I'm supposed to be talking about the actual stage. Once again, Sonic 3 brings amazing spectacle with this level, from the extremely well detailed sprite work, as well as that mirage effect from Sandopolis Zone. I especially love the set piece at the end, with the giant Death Egg robot in the background, setting the entire environment ablaze. This little moment does a great job of showing just how much of a threat Eggman is to any place he goes. The lava surrounding the place immediately informs the player that they should watch their step, so that when they do get punished for running too fast, or holding right to win as the folks say, it doesn't feel unfair or unwarranted as you're literally running through a lava-infested zone. This stage is just meant for you to take it easy, you know, cool off before the final section of the game. It definitely gives off that penultimate vibe that I was alluding to earlier. And with the steady difficulty spike that's not too harsh, I feel like this is probably the most chill zone in Classic Sonic in my opinion. Just a really solid and hearty stage. Nothing more to say. Number 27, a fan favorite in Mystic Cave Zone. While I'm not crazy about it, I do see the appeal of such a level. The absolutely funky theme that this zone gets, along with its nice contrasting color palette, really sets it apart from other classic Sonic stages and makes it a stark outlier. While I do like the idea of a giant spooky cave and the music is banging, there are a couple of level design faults that I can't really overlook. For one, that soft locking zone where if you accidentally fall off you get stuck in the spike pit, absolutely atrocious. Remove that from the game. The player should not be punished for messing up with having to restart their console. Are you insane? Also, these moving blocks are way too easy to get crushed on, I feel like. Maybe this is just a skill issue, but I don't know. I'm pretty decent at platforming, I'd say. These blocks should not have that much of a tight timing window on them. But other than those few hiccups, I feel like the zone is really fun to interact with. All of the cool switches and swings, along with the enemy variety, really makes the stage such a joy to play through. Yeah, just a really cool and unique stage. Nothing much more to say on that. Okay, for number 26, we have another doozy in Chemical Plant Zone. Now what's funny about this particular zone is my unique history with it. If you'd have asked me as a kid what my favorite Sonic zone was, this would have been far from at the top of the list. Probably near the bottom if anything. I just couldn't get past the pink liquid. It was too strong. That iconic set piece remained inside my mind for years to come, as it was the sole defining reason why I couldn't get past anywhere in Sonic 2 until I was much older. Now thinking deeper about it, it might have been the game's way of letting me off the hook, now knowing the hellish reality that is Sonic 2's last few stages. But Chemical Plant's vibe is just truly immaculate. I mean, as the second stage in the game, it truly showcases what this game is going to have to offer, with its insane speed and its instant jump into defining what the main difficulty obstacles are going to be for the player. I just love how industrial this zone looks, while still feeling like a beginner level, very much so. I mean, I've always had the complaint that most platformers do the generic start with the grassy level and end with the lava level, but Sonic was one of the few IPs that I saw break that mold continuously. I mean, sure, we start off with the grassy plain area, but then we transition into an industrial power plant with deadly chemicals, an ancient hydraulic temple, a bustling night casino. Sonic as a series always did things to stand apart from other platformers, and Chemical Plant is just a sole representation of that. Though I might have hated it as a kid, I now recognize it as the brilliant and satisfying level it is today. Okay, I know this section of the video is going to feel a little Sonic 2 heavy, but again, for number 25, we have another banger, Casino Night Zone from Sonic 2. As I said in my Carnival Nights segment for Sonic 3, this stage does that concept justice by having this bright and bustling city landscape in the background that's colorful and cheerful. The moment you boot up the stage, you just feel like you hit it big in Vegas and are about to go on a joyride through the city. And all of the level gimmicks are pretty iconic from this stage also. Trust me, I know, Sega loves reusing this for Sonic stages. And truly, that's just because the original was so damn good. The idea of taking Sonic's already unique and satisfying momentum physics and integrating them into a naturalistic gameplay style where you use it to play roulette and other casino-like games, I mean, it's genius, what can I say? They're taking modern game design principles, where you take the main mechanic of your game and expand it into more regions to make it more satisfying, instead of adding more new mechanics. And the music and style is just off the charts. It's crazy to think that this stage came after such a boring and uneventful level in Aquatic Ruin Zone. It's like the game designers woke up and said, oh shoot, we have to actually make a fun platforming game, let us lock in real bit, and gave us this masterpiece. Truly an amazing level. I do not blame Sega for bringing it back so much one bit. If anything, they should do it more, since there are a lot of stages that are far better than Green Hill Zone in my opinion. But hey, that's just me. Okay, this one is definitely a weird one, but for number 24, we have Tidal Tempest Zone for Sonic CD. Not many people talk about this level, but I feel like it's kind of insane how this is the first really well-made water level in a Sonic game. Seriously, the drowning mechanic is so manageable, and the overall aesthetic of this level is truly calming and surreal. Like most Sonic CD stage, the atmosphere is crafted perfectly to still feel frantic and fast-paced, but just calmly let the player know that it's okay to take your time, we're not going to rush you. And that really aids well in the overall exploration design that the developers really wanted to focus on. Being the third stage in the game, this is one of the few stages in Sonic CD where I can actually tell what's going on. The background details, while still nice looking, are pretty simplistic and easy to understand. And as I said before, no underwater section in this zone stays past its welcome. You just go in, do what you need to do, and get out. Hell, with some of these water tube gimmicks, you might want to actually stay in the water a bit longer than normal. Truly incredible how Sega knew how to design a proper water stage, but deliberately chooses to make them difficult just because of one silly misunderstanding of a hedgehog's biology. Man, game designers are truly wacky people. But yeah, I know Tidal Tempest isn't a fan favorite, but for me, it's just a nice, unobtrusive stage that is actively fun to play through. Tell me your thoughts about this stage. I'm curious as to how y'all feel about it, as I don't hear many people talk about it that much. Alright, we're finally here to the penultimate choice of B tier. For that, we have number 23, Starlight Zone, the second best stage in Sonic 1. I wonder what he'll choose for the best stage in this game. No, but in all seriousness, Starlight Zone just slaps. Everyone talks about it. After the hell that was Labyrinth Zone, it feels like the game is rewarding the player with this fast-paced and easy-to-go-through level. For some reason, this zone is just super nostalgic to me. I have no clue why, I definitely never made it this far into the game. Maybe it has to do with the various artworks of this stage that portrays it as this truly sublime, evening hour chill fest where you just sit down, relax, and enjoy the music. Now don't get me wrong, there are still some Sonic 1 isms in this level. The unforeseen enemy placement, some bottomless pits, some annoying slopes, the works. But at the end of the day, This is just a really solid platforming level through and through. You can't tell me that you wouldn't have a smile on your face as you hear this chiming melody ring through the evening night. And for once, it doesn't feel too long despite the fact that it has the 3-act structure like most of Sonic 1's stages. And that's mainly due to the fact that it's just focused on speed and platforming with not much difficulty. This amazing aesthetic of a stage is only able to be topped by one more in Sonic 1, and I'm sure you all are able to understand what the best zone in Sonic 1 is. For number 22 on this list, the top of B tier, we have Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. Do I really need to do much explaining? It's Green Hill Zone, the most iconic Sonic stage in all of history, where it all began. And it's just as fun and well designed as I remember. This was the only stage I was able to get past in Sonic 1. Hell, it's probably the only stage most people are willing to get through in Sonic 1. The background is gorgeous and appealing, the song iconic and uplifting all these years later, and the level design beautifully unique while strikingly familiar at the same time. It's crazy how this one level perfectly masters the thesis that is Sonic level design all at once. Good speed, good platforming, and good exploration, as well as a touch of narrative storytelling. All of these factors come in together to make possibly the best opening level to any platforming game, especially from the 90s. There are some small gripes here or there with the spiky bridge and the weird enemy placement at the beginning of Act 3, but overall, those small hindrances do not detract from the overall masterpiece that is Green Hill Zone. I feel like Sega's reliance on this zone really just goes to showcase how much they struck gold with the first few seconds of this amazing franchise. And again, the reason it's not any higher is not because it's not good, but just because the other zones on this list are so incredibly good that I couldn't find a way to put it higher than them. B tier is strictly for the heavily solid levels that are really fun to play through, and as such, it makes up the bulk of this video's tier list by quite a bit. These are the levels I could sit anybody down on who's familiar with the Sonic IP, and they'll probably have a good time one way or another. And Green Hill is just the pinnacle of this, easy to pick up and really hard to put down. Here comes the true bad boys of the list. For A tier, we have some of the best classic Sonic zones you'll ever play. These are the type of levels that I'll put any video game fan on, and they should expect to have a nice and decent time playing through it. These are some of the most memorable levels in the game, whose themes and aesthetics will remain in the minds of any player for many years to come. And for the first entry on our list, we have a pretty peculiar pick if I do say so myself, and that is Hidden Palace Zone from Sonic 2. Now, this zone was actually probably the hardest zone to rank on the entire tier list, mostly because I didn't know if it was appropriate enough to have an iOS exclusive stage this high ranked on the tier list. But sadly, it just is. This Hidden Palace remake is simply incredible. I mean, Christian Whitehead really showed his potential this early on. First off, the colors and sprite work are perfectly in line with Sonic 2's aesthetic, with it even surpassing the original at points. I especially love this underwater section, the beautiful diamonds in the background, with this purple liquid giving a nice refraction type of feel. It's all just really appealing. Even though this is a one-act zone, it's actually pretty decently long, with it easily taking people over 2 minutes if you're not already acclimated to its design. The fact that this man can so casually bring back what was thought of to be a lost level really goes to show his talent for level design. Just game development in general. I know most of y'all won't see eye to eye on this decision, but I feel like Hidden Palace Zone from Sonic 2, the epitome of what I mean when I say a zone is incredibly memorable and well made. Up next for number 20, we have Emerald Hill Zone. Yeah, just take everything I said about Green Hill Zone prior on this list and just times that by 11. This zone improves upon its original foundations in every conceivable way. It has a far more streamlined pathway in its design, with enemies and platforming obstacles placed far more gracefully and with better intent. The sprite work featured in the background is as gorgeous as ever, with it being the debut of Sonic 2's amazing art style. And the music, while not nearly as iconic, still has this cheerful and jovial vibe that aids in the overall beginner friendliness of such a level. In short, Emerald Hill Zone builds upon the original while also adding some more unique and subtle flair to its stage that makes it stand apart as its own unique entity. I really wish Sega would reuse this zone more often, as I really like this tropical beach-like vibe it gives, as opposed to Green Hill's more cavey plains area. Both really cool in their own right, but I give Emerald Hill the slight edge due to its more appealing aesthetic. Alright, we're coming through fast. With number 19, we have Death Egg Zone, another final level in these games. And might I say, this sets the standard for what a final Sonic level should feel like, even more so than Metallic Madness like I mentioned earlier. We start off with this hard industrial bass echoing in the background as Sonic makes it into the interior of this massive armada. The nice desaturated grays and harsh blues contrast greatly with Sky Sanctuary's more vibrant and appealing colors. Death Egg Zone's palette screams, this is a zone you don't want to mess with. And there are just so many memorable and iconic gimmicks from this stage. I mean, you have the anti-gravity rings, the upside down sections, these cool moving platforms, all to the side of this giant mechanical room with the centerpiece that stares you dead in the eye. I haven't mentioned this so far in the video yet, but I always loved the little nature versus technology narrative that Sonic games had going on, especially in the earlier eras. Putting this zone right next to something like Angel Island, Emerald Hill, Hydrosea, or even Marble Garden Zone really showcases just how out of place an alien Eggman is to this planet. It's like this band comes from a whole different universe where technology like this is the norm, and any semblance of grass and vegetation has been wiped out for centuries. There's not a single organic being in this compound besides the Eggman himself. And all of this creepy technology and strange artifacts really sells the idea that Sonic, you are not in a place that you're meant to be. An amazing final level, and easily one of the best stages in Sonic 3 and K. Okay, for the revamped Mania stages, these are gonna kinda sound really repetitive because all of my critiques basically come down to it takes the amazing stage but somehow makes it better. So for number 18, we have Lava Reef Zone from Mania, and what is there to say that hasn't already been said? Improve the sprite work tenfold, make the music even more serene and graceful, double the quality of the level design, and you got yourself a pretty satisfying, final-ish kind of level that doesn't hurt the player with difficulty too much, but also provides some pretty decent challenges for them to not get bored of. Although you also add in the fact that you get a slightly better boss for Act 2 in this Hard Boil Heavy. Their boss battle themes just go so hard, man, it's insane. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Lava Reef Zone is such a cool concept of a level. Oh goody, we're finally starting to get into my top favorites personally. For number 17, we have Ice Cap Zone from Sonic 3 and K, and you guys already knew it was going to be this high. I mean, we start off with the freaking snowboarding section, probably one of the first instances of cinematic gameplay in a video game period. I know people's minds were blown when this first came out, are you kidding me? And once you actually enter the cave, you just get rewarded with this gorgeous winterscape, with some nice platforming and this absolutely banger of a track playing in the background. It was at this point in the game when I started to realize that, oh man, this Sonic franchise is something special, isn't it? And this zone is just so full of iconic level design moments, like the aforementioned snowboarding section, this infinite falling section where you have to actually pay attention and not hold the right to win, and the fact that Act 2 takes you outside where you get to actually race on top of the ice glaciers. Man, it's just so cool. It's zones like these that really give the idea that Sonic is going on this grand adventure all across the world, and that he just goes wherever the wind takes him, introducing him to many cool and unique locations that furthers his wisdom, all while stopping the evil mustache man at the same time. Truly incredible how the game designers got this good with their IP in such a short amount of time, and Ice Cap Zone is just a testament to that. Easily one of the best zones in the game. Okay, right here is possibly the most underrated zone on this entire list, and that is number 16, Launch Base Zone. Before I say anything, the sheer concept of the zone is in the Lava Reef territory of being simply incredible. I mean, come on, you're literally traversing through a construction site where the main thing being built is the freaking Death Egg, the final area of the game. This amount of narrative foreshadowing was too great for video games at the time, I tell you. And the grandeur of such a level makes itself known instantly with the fact that this is the first lyrical track for a Sonic Zone, and might I add, it is also one of the most funky ones I've ever heard. Jeez, just listen to it. Michael Jackson's band was cooking with this game. On top of all of that, you also get yourself a pretty satisfying and well-designed level. And it's not even that difficult to play through, despite the fact that it's essentially the halfway point of the game. It's actually so easy, in fact, that you get to mock the main villain who's been tormenting you all this time. Seriously, this little set piece towards the end is so adorable with Knuckles. The reason I say this stage is so underrated is because I basically hear nobody talking about it, despite the fact that I think it's easily one of the best in the game. A nice art aesthetic with good music, memorable gimmicks and great enemy placement, and fantastic design and level progression. This stage just has all the hallmarks of a great Sonic level. Easily A tier. For number 15, we have a pretty iconic level in Stardust Speedway from Sonic CD. It's funny, the higher up I go on this list, the less explanations I need to give for why each level is so good. I mean, do you hear this music? Such a chill vibe, such a great integration of the past mechanics to show this bustling cityscape turn into a nice chilled out zone. Kind of reminiscent of Starlight from Sonic 1 if you ask me. But man, I don't know what about it, but when Sonic Team focuses on levels that are just pure speed, they always end up being some of the best zones in the entire franchise. I mean, the gimmick for this level isn't that complicated, it isn't that unique or special, it's just, hey, what if we added a lot of springs, speed pads, and corridors into the level, and just let the player go crazy? And that pretty much sums up the entirety of Stardust Speedway. It really is that simple. The fact that this is the penultimate level of the game just speaks wonders to how well the game designers understood the ebb and flow of their own platformer. I know I wouldn't mention boss fights, but come on, I can't mention Stardust Speedway without mentioning this absolutely iconic metal boss fight. I mean, it gave birth to one of the most iconic Sonic boss themes period, and am I the only one who actually intentionally gets the bad future in this level, just so that it seems more thematic and epic for the fight? This zone is just able to accomplish so much with such a simple concept. If you want to just go buck wild and try to break the speed barrier as much as you can, the zone has that for you. If you want to have this nice calm leisure through a gorgeous pixel art city, this zone has that for you also. It just seems like a pretty awesome and chaotic stage that is really hard to hate and super easy to love. For number 14, we finally made it to another zone that's probably just as iconic as Green Hill, Angel Island Zone. I mean, what isn't there to say about this level? An amazing intro sequence where Knuckles punches the Chaos Emeralds out of Sonic, the first time we actually see Super Sonic canonically get hurt. This incredibly satisfying and intricately designed intro sequence where we're introduced to all of the gimmicks of classic Sonic seamlessly without even knowing. And then it beautifully transitions into Act 2, where the main gimmick for Sonic 3 makes itself apparent. Each act this time around is going to feature a completely unique environment with completely new gimmicks and new music. And I feel like Angel Island demonstrates this perfectly, with having the forest burn up in flames as Eggman violently attacks it. Sonic, now being forced to navigate through its much harsher terrain, as well as collecting these conveniently placed elemental shields that do a great job of acclimating themselves to the player. They add such good depth and variety to the gameplay. But man, Angel Island is just a really nice and satisfying zone. All of the interactable objects with this zone makes it feel more alive and realistic, and it just flows well from set piece to set piece, nothing feeling too slow or too fast. Great pacing, and an amazing introductory level. Okay, this is probably going to be the weirdest entry on this list, as for the first time, I'm doing a double entry of both Hydrocity zones from Sonic 3 and Sonic Mania, because I cannot for the life of me distinguish between the two great enough to place them differently on this list. So for number 13 and 12, we get Hydrocity Zone, and yes, I'm calling it Hydrocity, because I think it sounds cooler, and I actually do have a life outside of this gaming franchise, thank you very much. So this zone is actually pretty funny to me, because it was also a zone I couldn't get past as a kid, which is just a testament to how terrible I was at these games. But Hydrocity did something that I thought was impossible at the time, and that was make a water level in Sonic that wasn't just passable, but was actually fun and that I wanted to go replay in the future. And the reason for this is simple, really. They make the underwater sections really fast, just like the regular gameplay. For once in a Sonic level, I feel like Hydrocity is the only stage where Sonic can actually run fast underwater and it feels super naturalistic and fun. And the parts where you're not running at top speed have these fun little gimmicks to distract you from the drowning mechanic, as well as the game just featuring the handy bubble shield, which simply makes traversing through the underwater sections in this game a lot less painful. Top that off with the fact that it has one of the best level themes in the entire game, and possibly in the entire franchise in my opinion, along with the really cool temple-esque aesthetic that goes for a more Aztecian ancient city kind of vibe, and Hydrasty just stands as one of the most interesting and engaging levels in a platformer. Seriously, I've seen other platforming games be inspired by this one level alone. As for the Mania version of Hydrasty, I don't really notice that many differences, as the level design feels pretty copy and pasted. The most notable change being the first boss fight of Act 1, where you actually drive Eggman's mech to destroy him. But even Act 2's boss is basically the same from the original, so I don't know. If y'all can find some meaningful differences, tell me in the comment section. But right now, they're basically at the same tier in my eyes. Just Mania is slightly higher due to it being a much higher quality game. You know how you can tell if you're getting to the top of a Sonic Zones ranking list? If the entries start featuring Sonic Mania more often than not. Because for number 11 on this list, we have Metallic Madness from Sonic Mania. And oh boy, unlike Hydrasty, I do see a lot of differences with this level that make it significantly better than the original. First off, the music for Act 1 and Act 2, just peak. By far my favorite remixes in Sonic Mania, period. The second reason for it being this high on the list actually has more to do with nostalgia. As you're probably well aware by now, I did not make it that far into Sonic games, mostly because of the difficulty spikes they had and my impatience as a kid. So on my first playthrough of Sonic Mania, I actually had no idea that Metallic Madness was from Sonic CD, making this a completely original zone in my eyes, and I actually placed it on the same tier as the original stages for Sonic Mania, which if you know anything, that's just some crazy praise to have for this zone. And who could blame me? The music is incredible, as well as the sprite work for this zone selling the idea of a giant metallic hellscape better than the original. The gimmicks in this level are far better integrated and actually placed well where the player will be able to interact with them more. And Act 2's own tone and aesthetic just gives me huge Disco Fever vibes, with most of the level feeling like Sonic's in an eternal dance inside of Eggman's clutches, getting attacked with damn near everything Eggman has at his disposal. You even got this cute little chibi Sonic form, which lasts way longer in this zone, and is by far a more memorable gimmick than anything else in Sonic Mania. I mean, Metallic Madness in Sonic Mania just feels like memorable set piece after memorable set piece, with good enemy design and excellent level design to boot. Definitely deserving of the top spot in A tier, and you know from here on out in the video, each level is just going to progressively get more and more fire as we come close to the end. For all of you all that stuck around this far, thank you very much. As I know nowadays, it's really hard to keep your attention span on something for this long and hearing someone else ramble about something they're passionate about. So I guarantee, for this next tier, it's gonna be a banger. You know, I didn't think the video would take this long. We're in the home stretch, people. These are the classic Sonic zones that I consider to be some of the best platforming levels of all time. Each of them feature art, music, and level design that will probably remain etched inside of my mind till the end of history. These are the zones I consider to be the top 10 in all of Sonic. And for the 10th spot on this list, we have an oldie but a goodie. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be Green Hill Zone from Sonic Mania. And man, what a stage to start off with. You already know how much the original zone slaps with its easy to understand gameplay and endlessly iconic main theme. But man, the Mania version just turns that all up to 11. The background elements this time are far more detailed and animated, with it now giving more context to the idea that Sonic is traveling through this lush, beautifully serene cavern with large tiki statues bellowing in the background. These gorgeous waterfalls cover the terrain and gives great contrast to these checkerboarded green plains. Not to mention all the amazing gimmicks they add to this level, like in Act 2 with the zip lines, the waterfall section, and the even more breakable terrain. It's just easily the best beginning level in all these classic Sonic games, bar none. You took something that was already masterful and made it even more perfect, and for that, I commend them. For number 9 on this list, we have Quartz Quadrant Zone from Sonic CD. And yeah, I'm just as surprised as you how high up it made it on the list. Out of all the Sonic CD stages, this one speaks personally to me for getting across the theme of the game absolutely perfectly. The level progression of this level, from a calm crystal cave to a super surrealist utopia city with Jetsons-like architectural design is simply incredible. And the music in this level is easily some of the best classic Sonic music I've ever heard, particularly the Good Future version of this in the Japanese OST, where the song is so serene and graceful, it draws in the player to the fact that Sonic has succeeded, he saved the future, and you're getting rewarded with this masterpiece of a banger. Sure, the level design may not be as strong as the other ones in S tier, there are some annoying moments with the conveyor belts and enemy placement, but at the end of the day, Quartz Quadrant has the most elegant tone out of all the classic Sonic zones. It is the one zone in Sonic CD where I feel completely at peace and harmony. Truly a spectacular level. Number 8 on this list is one I had to fight for a bit, and that is Titanic Monarch from Sonic Mania. Being another super underrated level in my opinion, this is easily the best final zone that a classic Sonic game has to offer, and it gives off those vibes perfectly. From the George Orwellian dystopian aesthetic, to the amazing dark synths and sci-fi instrumentation that make up its haunting theme, Titanic Monarch manages to sound and look so intimidating while still having a vibrant color palette and memorable set pieces. The difficulty is super noticeable, but easy to manage if you're paying attention, as this level is meant to test all the player's skill throughout the entire course of the game. And Act 2 really just brings it all together, with this 4-section pathway that forces the player to actually choose which way he goes first, adding to the player's agency, and indirectly aiding in the idea that these are the final moments of the game. There's no going back from here. And it is the only classic Sonic zone to implement this kind of design into its level. All of these factors add up to a pretty immensely satisfying final zone for Sonic Mania, and it serves as an amazing climax to the amazing and memorable journey that Sonic Mania has to offer. Okay, if you're a close viewer of my videos, you know I use this zone and its theme many times as background footage, and that's just because it's too damn good. For number 7, we have Stardust Speedway from Sonic Mania, another banger of a level. Take the original Stardust Speedway, this beautiful abstract cityscape with a fast pace and an amazing tone, and turn it up to 11 while also implementing some of the best music I've heard in a video game in Act 2's theme. And you've got yourself a pretty straightforwardly satisfying level with 2 amazing boss fights and an absolutely banger aesthetic. All of the Act 2's gimmicks just go crazy with the player's agency and have the sole purpose of just making you go as fast as possible in this game. And it still manages to have beautiful level design and sprite work that surpasses the original in both flair and tone. It's just a really fast and memorable stage, through and through. Another surprise pick, I know, but for number 6 we have Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2, what I believe to be the best zone in the game. And the reasons are actually quite simple, really. This zone has probably the most unique and engaging aesthetic out of any Sonic 2 stage. Hell, any classic Sonic stage. This is probably just due to nostalgia, but I always loved the idea of these giant hilltops towering above the clouds, while the trough in the valley of such a place lies a giant volcano spewing hot lava. Such a creative and imaginable location for a game, and it works perfect with Sonic 2's hyper-saturated art style. One of the fun facts I like about this level was that it was supposed to serve as the past version of Green Hill Zone for Sonic 2's beta. That's why the song in this place kinda sounds so whimsical and old-timey. And on top of all of that, this level also happens to feature some incredible level design, with it serving as a little bit of a difficulty spike for the later half of Sonic 2, while also not being too intrusive. I know this is probably a more disagreeable pick on the list than most, but Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2 just has the most appealing art and music to me. It's the first zone I remember whenever I boot up the game, or when anyone talks about Sonic 2, and for that, it easily makes the S tier. We're rapidly approaching the end of this tier, and thus the video entirely. For the first entry in the top 5 classic Sonic zones of all time, we have Mushroom Hill Zone from Sonic 3. Oh boy, if the last zone was kinda swayed by nostalgia, then this zone most certainly is as well. This was by far the level I replayed the most as a kid. I already said before that I could never get past Flying Battery Zone, so because of that, I played Mushroom Hill so many times. And I've come to really appreciate its super open-ended level design and the insane interactability of all the gimmicks in the level. Seriously, every single gimmick that you can find in this zone is either a background prop or blends in with the level seamlessly. It really gives credence to the idea that Sonic 3's level design is more organic and naturalistic than other classic Sonic stages. And it's the zone in which I feel perfects this level design philosophy perfectly. Add into that the most memorable brass score imaginable and a unique jungle-like vibe and aesthetic, and you've got yourself probably the most interesting beginner stage for a platforming game in my opinion. This is a zone you should get people to play if they've never touched a Sonic game before, as it will flawlessly teach the level design philosophy of this franchise to any player. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be this high either. For number 4 on this list, we have Chemical Plant Zone from Mania. I just gotta say, this is the most glowed up zone in the entire franchise. I mean, you took Chemical Plant, a pretty good level in its own right with some basic platforming and hard difficulty spikes, and you just turned it into a masterpiece, specifically talking about Act 2 by the way. First off, you have this revamped remix of the Act 1 theme with it starting off in a jumbled frenzy, giving credence to the idea that you're racing through a melting power plant just ready to blow at any moment. The use of the hospital IV readers as a way to keep tempo at the beginning of the song is just pure composition and genius, and truly T-Lopes pushing his creativity to the maximum degree. And then you just have the level itself, with this amazing syringe gimmick that basically turns the entire facility into this giant acrobatic speed zone, with background art that makes this place look even more hazardous and lively. And then you finish off all that amazing level design with the most memorable set piece of them all, a tongue-in-cheek nod to Eggman's Mean Bean Machine, that obscure minigame from the Sega Genesis. It's just zones like these that prove that Mania's team were Sonic fans first and game developers second. They managed to incorporate so much fan service in such a highly dense amount of time, and zones like these just remind me of just how lucky we are to have such talented people in the Sonic fandom. A truly amazing stage worthy of the S tier ranking. Now this is by far the most painful stage on this list, because I meant to have it as the top 1 spot easily. Act 2 of Mirage Saloon is just simply the perfect level, but sadly, Act 1's recreation of Sky Chase Zone just drags it down the slightest bit from the peak. But man, even that portion of the zone has some highlights, with this gorgeous sprite work of the desert in the background. But Act 2 of Mirage Saloon is just simply the best desert level in any platforming game. The fact that this revived level of Desert Dazzle manages to be such a good and iconic stage is just purely perfection. Both Act 1 and Act 2's themes slap hard. The amount of subtle references and cool callbacks in this level are simply a joy to see, and the gimmicks are some of the best that Sonic Mania has, such as the seltzer platforms and this adorable little bar setting that has wanted posters plastered everywhere of these lost Sonic icons. The fact that this is one of the shortest levels in the game, but is chock full of such dense and quality content, simply amazes me. It's just the perfect setting for a desert level. I love the colors and aesthetic, the music is one of the best themes ever, the enemy and level design is essentially perfect. Hell, even the name of this place, Mirage Saloon, just sounds so insanely cool. Even though Act 1 dragged the zone down a bit, it's still a masterpiece in my eyes. Alright, y'all probably guessed before this video even started what the top 2 picks were going to be, and if you didn't, well, here we go. For number 2, we have Press Garden Zone from Sonic Mania. I mentioned in my Sonic Superstars and Mania comparison video how while Sonic Mania has a lot of reused stages, the revamped level design in most of them and the sheer quality of its original stages make up for it quite a bit. Well, Press Garden is one of those zones that I go to when I want to talk about this. Seriously, the concept of this level being a giant press factory in the middle of a winterscape garden with Japanese sakura flowers littering out every place. It's a genius and innovative concept like that can only be provided by people who are passionate about this stuff. The colors, oh, the colors, man. Every sprite in this place feels so alive and animated. You can just feel the architectural design as you race down these brick and mortar runways. And then Act 2 introduces us to this amazing ice level with fun gimmicks and a theme that will leave you simply breathless. Press Garden is just the perfect progression of any zone that wears its beauty on its sleeve and is unequivocally unafraid of being unique and daring. It has such a bold and out there concept that is brought to life brilliantly through its gorgeous sprite work and enticing music. As such, it is a brilliant testament to just how passionate the developers for Sonic Mania were when designing each original zone in the game. But of course, there is one zone that stands among all of them as the true magnum opus to this design. One legendary zone that combines the best aspects from every single classic Sonic zone on this list. A zone that is so memorable and iconic from the first few seconds of it being portrayed that it instantly became the key signifier for Sonic Mania's greatness and all of its legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have my number one pick for the best classic Sonic zone of all time, Studiopolis Zone. After that long journey of talking about the greatness of every one of these levels, Studiopolis just leaves me with a loss of words. Its greatness can't be quantified by sheer words alone. It's simply a zone you have to play yourself for you to get the full experience of. What is there not to say about such a zone? It has a 10 out of 10 aesthetic, with this gorgeous night cityscape vibe, and an easy casino-like design to go along with it. The abundance of cool references to Sega's amazing past are bright and clear for all to see. The music is triumphant and uplifting, like you're purely here to just have a good time and nothing else. And the level design is seamless and engaging, with unintrusive gimmicks that guide the player easily through this gorgeous pixel art masterpiece. And then we get to Act 2, where that same casino-like design is turned up to 11 as this giant center stage opens up as we see Sonic traverse through this grand theater, the music becoming even more grander and hype as the level progresses. To put it bluntly, Studiopolis is nothing short of an artistic masterpiece, brilliantly crafted from the ground up to resemble what a classic Sonic stage should look and feel like to the utmost degree. In music, art, and level design, this zone reaches the peak of what the developers had envisioned for this IP all the way back in 1992. And because of all that, it is what I believe to be the best zone in all of Sonic. Sitting at the top of S tier among them all, Studiopolis, you are truly one gem of a level. Well, that's it. That's all the rankings. I thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, as it obviously took me a very long time to make this video. Make sure to be on the lookout for my part 2 of this series, where I go over Sonic Superstars and the Dim Sonic games and rank and review all of those as well. Yeah, I'm gonna go to sleep, guys. Have a nice day.